I'm Eric Anderson. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, could a site in Orange County be the next place the Chargers take the field? We'll tell you about the latest developments in their quest for a new stadium. Also tonight, one of the most high-profile races of the June primary is already over. And we travel into an underground world, literally, right across the border. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. New developments tonight in the Chargers Stadium saga. First, the team has submitted plans for an interim football facility in Santa Ana. That's in case owner Dean Spanos decides to make the move to Inglewood. In a written statement, the team says no final decision has been made, but the Chargers had to submit plans for a temporary practice field at headquarters now because of the time it takes to get approvals and the time needed to prepare the practice fields. For now, the Chargers say they are still reviewing all of their options, which include reaching an agreement for a new stadium here in San Diego. Also today, commissioners for the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum met. They were considering a plan to let 2 NFL teams play there until the new Rams Stadium is built in Inglewood. The Coliseum is home field for USC, and the current lease would only allow 1 pro team in the facility. The Rams would be that team. The question is whether the Chargers will be another. Chargers owner Dean Spanos is still considering whether he wants to move to Inglewood. If he says no, the Oakland Raiders will get an option to move to Los Angeles. One of the most high-profile races of the June primary is already over. State Senator Marty Block says he will not seek re-election. He faced a stiff challenge from fellow Democrat Assembly Speaker Tony Atkins. KPBS reporter Steve Walsh joins us from the newsroom with the story.
Block's announcement that he would not seek a second term came as a surprise since he had already begun a series of debates with Atkins ahead of the June Democratic primary.
It became increasingly clear that she and I are on almost exactly the same page on almost every issue. We're both very progressive Democrats who want to do the best we can for the state of California and for San Diego.
Block faced a February 1st filing deadline for campaign finance reports. In his latest one filed in June, he had raised close to $79,000. Atkins reported in January that her campaign had raised $1.6 million. Block said running against a high-profile Democrat affected his fundraising, but it was not the reason he was dropping out.
I'm sure that the Senate Democrats were committed to helping me raise what it took to win this campaign.
Now that he is pulling out, Atkins said she looks forward to supporting Block in the future.
From the beginning, both of us looked at each other from very early on and said, we hope we'll be able to figure this out. So obviously, he made a decision.
Block said he has not decided what he'll do after leaving the Senate. He's interested in returning to higher education, pointing out that he worked on legislation which allowed community colleges to offer 4-year degrees. He did rule out a run for San Diego mayor. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Former Assemblymember Lori Saldana has officially entered the race for San Diego mayor. She made her campaign announcement Thursday morning at a Midway District meeting hall. Her campaign faces an uphill battle. The Republican mayor, Kevin Faulconer, is relatively popular, and he's raised more than $1 million. Saldana says she hasn't even started fundraising.
For those who ask if this is a ridiculous quest, I have to tell you that I was the daughter of a career Marine. He taught me that some battles are worth fighting, some challenges are worth taking on, no matter what the odds are. And I love this city very much. And I think fighting for San Diego and a better, brighter future for San Diego is well worth the fight and well worth the challenge that I'm about to undertake.
Faulconer's campaign spokesman says the mayor has been expecting a progressive challenger to enter the race, and he welcomes the chance to debate what is best for San Diego. Another high-ranking naval officer is pleading guilty in a massive bribery case involving a defense contractor. It's the 8th guilty plea in the case surrounding Leonard Francis, the man nicknamed Fat Leonard. The Malaysian contractor is accused of offering bribes to officers so they would send business to his port facilities in Asia. The investigation is still going on, and more charges could be filed. New indictments were announced today in what prosecutors are calling the largest workers' comp bribery scheme ever in San Diego County. Local law enforcement and the FBI have been working together on Operation Backlash. It's an investigation into kickbacks paid to some chiropractors in exchange for patient referrals. Investigators say those payments resulted in millions of dollars in fraudulent workmen's compensation claims. Governor Brown, meanwhile, recently announced an initiative to allow nonviolent prisoners a chance for early parole, and that's getting mixed reviews in the California legislature. Brown says his goal is to reduce prison overcrowding and to improve rehabilitation methods for convicted criminals. His new plan comes after voters approved a measure 2014 to reduce sentences in 2014 to reduce sentences for some nonviolent offenders, and a prison realignment initiative that relocated many low-level offenders to local jails. Some lawmakers say those efforts failed, pointing to recent spikes in crime as an unintended consequence.
We have a huge spike in crime after decades of really decline. We have violent crimes almost up 20%, property crimes up about 10%. We believe there's a causal effect on this. If we go and turn even more felons loose, I think we're just throwing gasoline on a fire.
San Diego District Attorney Bonnie Dumanis says the law isn't perfect, but protections will ensure parolees can be rehabilitated.
They're going to have a screening process, and they will look at all of the background of the individual. So all those that are eligible won't necessarily have parole hearings. They will just have an opportunity.
Californians will decide whether to approve the plan in November. Self-driving cars have maneuvered their way back onto the agenda in Sacramento while regulators are trying to figure out rules for the roads full of self-driving cars. Some consumer groups are sounding warnings about the vehicles and incidents where humans had to take control.
There are common driving situations that the cars have been encountering that they simply cannot deal with, or that the human test driver felt that the car couldn't deal with and took control.
The makers of self-driving cars say they'll only release the technology when they feel it's safe. 7 companies are testing prototypes. California lawmakers are also working to help drivers end unfair parking tickets. Lawmakers are drafting a measure that intends to crack down on city governments wrongfully ticketing people for the sake of making more money. Now, the bill will address several situations, like parking in front of broken meters that the city itself has not fixed, but then city officials still issue a ticket.
I think a lot of city governments will be upset that there is a loss of revenue, but remember, this is not designed to be a tax. This is a penalty for people who break the law, and I think cities are increasingly viewing it as another tax, a way to bring revenue to their coffers, and that's not what parking laws were intended to do.
The bill will be introduced next week. 2 state bills aimed at making diapers more affordable advanced out of the California Assembly today. Lawmakers approved one bill to exempt child diapers from sales tax and another that gives a $50 monthly credit to qualified welfare-to-work recipients for diapers. The bills were written by San Diego Democratic Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez. Both bills now head to the Senate. State senators rushed emergency legislation through committees today to temporarily stop new natural gas injections into the Aliso Canyon storage facility. Now, the gas leak there has been spewing methane for the past 3 months. State regulators would decide when it would be safe to inject gas or extract gas. The bill now heads to the Assembly. California residents only have a couple more days to sign up for health care insurance so they can avoid huge fines from the federal government. Covered California's executive director, Peter Lee, says there are still more than 1 million people without coverage, and he says they have until Sunday to enroll, or they face a fine that starts at about $700 and could climb much higher.
All of these folks, whether they're eligible for Covered California or Medi-Cal, they can find out literally in a minute at our website, coveredca.com, if they're eligible for a subsidy by putting in their income, their zip code, and their family size. Bam, we'll be able to see if they're eligible for Medi-Cal, eligible for financial help with Covered California. And from there, they can then say, I'm kind of confused, hit Find Help Near Me.
Lee says people are aware there's a deadline. He says more than or rather 120,000 people have called in asking questions in the past couple of days. A national Kaiser Foundation poll found only 15% of the uninsured know about the deadline. And Lee says that's not the case here in California. The University of San Diego is getting $12 million to prepare more women and minorities to enter careers in science, technology, engineering, and math. Those are called STEM careers. Now, the big check is the final gift from the Noyce Foundation, named for Robert Noyce, the co-founder of Intel and the inventor of the integrated circuit. The money will set up a new center called STEM Next.
We hope that the center becomes recognized nationwide as a place to go for help in thinking what to do about after school and informal science, and that the field itself continues to thrive and grow.
If women were fully represented in STEM jobs, the U.S. would have another 1.2 million engineers and another 1.8 million scientists. It's been almost a year since hundreds of migrants were forced out of a homeless encampment along the Tijuana River Canal and placed in rehab. Many of them are now back in the canal, hiding out from police in tunnels. KPBS Fronteras reporter Jean Guerrero went inside the tunnels to talk to the migrants. And we want to warn you, some of the images in this story may be disturbing.
Aquí arriba. Pues aquí estamos en una alcantarilla. ¿Verdad? Y aquí vivo porque pues como soy inmigrante yo aquí y no tengo la manera de estar en un lugar mejor. Nos miran allá abajo y nos levanta la policía.
Jose Alberto Zavala is known as Chapo, like the Mexican drug lord, because of his short stature. But the similarities pretty much end there.
Es niña, ¿eh?
He recently rescued this cat from the side of the road.
Ya me golpeé el otro día porque me querían llevar para allá para adentro, pero eso es un secuestro. Eso es, mira, lo que hacen aquí atenta contra tus derechos humanos, mujer. Mientras el vagabundo no ofenda a nadie, no agreda a nadie, no le falte respeto a nadie, ahí los deben de dejar. Pues llegan los señores oficiales y llegan así con las pistolotas, así con metralletas, como si fuera uno el Chapo Guzmán.
Chapo is one of hundreds of migrants living inside the Tijuana River Canal's tunnels, months after the government forced them out of a homeless encampment known as El Bordo and into rehab centers. Officials say the migrants were hurting tourism and committing crimes. Many were using heroin or methamphetamine after being deported from the U.S., where they had families and jobs. But some, like Chapo, say they don't do drugs at all. Even some of those were shipped to rehab. Since then, hundreds have escaped or were released from these facilities. Police continue arresting them, placing them back in rehab, in jail, or on buses out of town. Police raids of the canal are sometimes proving fatal.
Un hombre que cruzó corriendo por la vía rápida poniente fue atropellado y falleció.
The canal is flanked by Tijuana's busiest highways, and when the migrants run from the police, some are killed by cars speeding past. Just this month, at least 2 were killed trying to escape police. In a nearby part of the canal on a recent Friday night, about 40 migrants gathered around campfires in the dark. They agreed to be interviewed, but asked us not to show their faces because they were afraid of police retaliation. A migrant who called himself Carlos Francisco says he had been run over by a car while running across the highway during a police raid 2 days prior. He was injured so badly he couldn't walk.
Una cobija, nada, por favor.
Tengo 2-3 días, voy para 2 días, 3 con el de ahora, porque vienen y nos agarran, nos golpean.
Another man had a large gash on his head from where he says police threw him against the asphalt during the same raid. Back in Chapo's part of the tunnel, he remembers some of his most recently killed friends.
Hace como un mes, un amigo mío que era el 18. Sí, me dejó la policía y lo mató un carro. Ahí tengo la cruz. Ahí. Porque por su culpa, miran cómo han matado amigos míos. Al 18, al Chapitas, al de Oaxaca. Porque no sé por qué.
He says the police sometimes arrest migrants when they're just standing on the street, trying to find work in construction or other hard labor.
This is the stats that we used to have.
Tijuana's police chief Alejandro Lares denies arresting migrants who are just trying to find work. He says police detain only those migrants who are committing crimes, including sleeping in the canal, which is federal property. He says he plans to flush everybody out of the canal in the coming weeks.
Oh, that's actually a phase 2, a phase 3. We're going to take over the whole ravine on Tijuana.
Lares says he's ordered 14 all-terrain vehicles to patrol the canal. He expects them to arrive any day now.
It's a no man's land. So for that, it's easier for them to buy drugs, sell drugs, and obviously to consume drugs.
When asked about alleged police beatings, he says migrants should file complaints so that he can investigate.
I'm not going to tolerate any abuse from an officer to a citizen.
He says police can't be blamed for those migrants who die crossing the highways. He says those are under the influence of substances, not being provoked by police.
Sí.
Back in the tunnels, Chapo says experience has taught migrants how to time their dashes across the highway just right. The migrants also look after each other, stopping those who are under the influence from crossing the highways. He says it's when the police come that they panic.
No tienen corazón, güerita. No tienen corazón ellos para no sé cómo nos miran, pues.
In Chapo's opinion, the current strategy of flushing the migrants out of the canal makes life so difficult for them that they have no choice but to turn to petty crimes.
Llegan y 2, 3 patadones y una zapatilla y vamos para arriba. ¿Por qué? Porque no traes credencial y no tienes que estar durmiendo aquí. ¿Y dónde quieres que duerma si no me dejas trabajar? ¿Dónde quieres que duerma? Si voy a juntar botes, me levantas. Si voy a los contenedores, me levantas. ¿Qué? ¿Que por qué andan muy grosso? Porque pues, no das chance ni de bañarse. ¿Así? ¿Qué quieres que haga, señor oficial?
He says he doesn't think Tijuana officials will ever succeed in clearing the canal of homeless migrants.
Esta es frontera y siempre va a haber inmigrantes. Siempre va a haber.
Yet bloodstains on the highway suggest a dying struggle. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
Courage is contagious. Courage is shared. Courage is much more than bravery and boldness because courage lives in the heart.
NASA remembering the courage of its fallen astronauts today at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. 30 years ago today, the crew of the Space Shuttle Challenger was killed in an explosion minutes after launch. That crew included the first teacher in space, Krista McAuliffe. NASA is also remembering astronauts and test pilots who died in other accidents.
I'm Gwen Eiffel. On the next news hour, we talk with Matthew Trevithick, the 5th American recently released by Iran. That's Thursday on the PBS NewsHour.
An apartment complex is teetering on the edge of a cliff north of San Francisco. This is in Pacifica. Now, crashing waves and heavy rains have eaten away at the cliffs. The building has about 20 units. Residents were ordered out earlier this week. The storms have uncovered something else along the Coronado shoreline, the remains of a ship called the Monte Carlo. Ken Kramer gives us a look at the old wreck in this segment from About San Diego.
This is the beach at Coronado, and it isn't just any day at the beach. It's low tide, and at low tide, you can see something out there on the sand. Looks like little bumps, rocks. See them? And if you notice, and a lot of people don't notice, but if you do, you see there's a straight shape to them and some corners. Turns out, no, they're not rocks at all. This is all that's left of something that washed up here a long time ago, something big. That something was the Monte Carlo, a gambling ship that had been anchored out at sea but broke loose in a storm on New Year's Eve in 1936. The following day, it crashed ashore on South Coronado Beach. Richard Kenny, United States Air Force Colonel Richard Kenny, remembers he was just a kid back then working as a lifeguard at the Hotel Del.
Yeah, which meant I was picking up cigarette butts around the pool.
Well, he went down to take a look, of course. Who wouldn't? The owners had abandoned it, and townspeople were grabbing everything from roulette wheels to the Douglas fir dance floor and liquor.
Most people that I saw were scavenging bottles that was still booze. That's why it was outside the 3-mile limit.
Here's a chair that somebody picked up that eventually made its way over to the Coronado History Museum, along with a menu from the Monte Carlo. They called it a ship, but really it was just anchored out there. It had no power of its own. When it broke loose in the storm, there was no controlling it.
It was a barge with no motor, concrete barge.
But in its heyday, ads in the paper made it seem so elegant aboard. Water taxis skidding over the waves going back and forth to the Monte Carlo to and from the pleasure ship. When it broke loose, there were no passengers aboard, just 2 caretakers who got off safely. And now, here it was, beached and picked over.
About 2 days later, it was all gone. In other words, people pretty well scrounged and finally the officials got here and got it under control.
Colonel Kenny, a 16-year-old kid back then, didn't walk away empty-handed, though. All these years later, he's still got a couple of souvenirs.
I got these out of a tabletop, like a roulette wheel, and they had a drawer in it, and they had a few silver dollars in it.
So what can be seen today? It kind of depends on the water level. Almost all the Monte Carlo has been hauled or washed away in 3/4 of a century. But on some days, when the tide and the sand is particularly low, more of it shows up.
I've walked around it, and once in a while when it sticks up, they come and cut some more rebar out of it or something.
It did pose more of a danger in past years when more parts of it would end up being exposed. As to Colonel Kenny, aged 92 when he talked with us, much decorated World War II pilot, POW, he never imagined he'd still have those silver dollars from New Year's Day 1937, or that anybody would ask him about the Monte Carlo all these years later.
I never suspected as being a fighter pilot I'd be around at 92 either. I thought it'd be a hole in the ground probably or something.
He says, he doesn't recall much, but he is one who does remember that gambling ship, what happened to it, and what these things in the Coronado sand really are, traces of the Monte Carlo, and a little bit of history about San Diego.
Well, you couldn't tell from that picture, but it's going to be another warm, sunny day in San Diego. And if you're heading to the beach, there will be a high surf advisory in effect through Saturday. KPBS weather reporter Steph Davis has the weekend forecast.
What a beautiful Thursday so far all across the San Diego area, and thankfully this quiet weather pattern will continue into tonight and into the day tomorrow. Taking a look at our satellite and radar, you'll notice off to the north, though, we are dealing with the storm system that's bringing some rain to parts of northern and central California. The yellows on satellite and radar indicating locally heavy rain. So if you're traveling north, definitely want to watch for travel delays, though if you're sticking around the San Diego area, you should be good to go. Taking a look at our regional satellite and radar, you'll notice mainly clear skies and largely dry conditions, a very pleasant weather pattern as we head into our Thursday night, and that's what we can expect as we head into Friday morning. Looking at clear skies tonight in Borrego Springs, your overnight low is 38 degrees, a quiet night in Mount Laguna as temperatures fall back near freezing. Also looking quiet with clear skies tonight in Ramona and Oceanside. 51 is your overnight low in San Diego itself. Looking ahead to our Friday, that rain will continue to spread into Central California. We'll see winds pick up as well, but luckily for Southern California, pressing towards the Four Corners, largely dry, pleasant conditions for our Friday with a mix of clouds and sunshine. But get out and enjoy it because we do have some soggy weather heading our way as we head towards the weekend. We'll take a look at those details in your 5-day outlook along the coast. As I mentioned, beautiful Friday and Saturday with partial sunshine, largely dry conditions, and daytime highs in the mid to upper 60s. Now, we will see the arrival of a storm system on Sunday that will bring rain and windy conditions to the area with a daytime high of 61. Drying things out Monday, and a couple more showers are in the forecast for your Tuesday. There's also a high surf advisory in effect along the coast, and that will go into effect tonight and remain in effect until Saturday. Again, a high surf advisory for the coast tonight throughout your Saturday night. That ends at 10 o'clock local time Saturday night. 5-day outlook inland looks good as well. Friday and Saturday dry with partial sunshine. Sunday we do have the arrival of that system. Watch for wind and rain, drying things out quickly Monday, and then a couple of showers in spots inland for your Tuesday. Same deal in the mountains. The only difference is here is that rain will switch over to snow late night as temperatures drop into the 20s, and then a couple more afternoon showers to deal with for the mountains on your Tuesday. Looking towards the deserts, we'll even catch a couple of spotty showers across that region for your Sunday. Monday, cool with sunshine, a little bit of rain returning for your Tuesday. Steph Davis, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll be back here again tomorrow night. Have yourself a great evening.